So thank you everyone for joining us. Today we're going to have an info session on resume and cover letters with Michael Tam. Michael Tam is the program lawyer of Osgoode Hollow School, the professional graduate in international programs at Osgoode. He does program and curricular development, admissions, academic advising, and more relevant to this session, he also does career advising for law students, including resume and cover letter review, networking strategies, and mock interviews. Before he joined OsgoodePD, he completed his National Committee on Accreditation process in 2013, and he was called to the Bar of Ontario in 2015. Michael helped me with my own resume and cover letter, and I'm sure that all the tips that he's going to be giving you guys is going to be very useful. Welcome, Michael, and you can start the presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. I'm gonna leave it open to you to unmute yourself, Priscilla, if you have any contributions to any of my slides, because you have just recently gone through this process of doing resumes and cover letters, so I'm sure your insights are going to be super helpful. But thank you for introducing me. Like Priscilla said, I'm sort of like a resume and cover letter person for all of the LLM students within my programs, and I'm happy to be a part of the ITLNCA network to give you this advice, to give you this platform to learn from. I'm going to run through my presentation. Priscilla is also going to talk about her experience close to the end as well. And then I'll leave it open, hopefully, for some questions at the end. So, jot down your questions or use the chat function to type out your questions, and we'll try to get to them at the end. So one of the things that I really want to get across to all of you is that there needs to be a shift in mindset. A lot of you are starting from this perception that you're somehow less than, or not as competitive, or not as strong. And so I need you to get out of that mindset completely. I need you to understand how your experience is valuable, how your education makes you unique, how the passion you have translates across different jurisdictions, and how things like lawyering is the same no matter where in the world you are. It's just the jurisprudence and the laws that are different. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation, please just think to value your experiences, to value your journey, to value the passion and drive that you have, and be able to market that to a potential employer. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of clearly wrong things in terms of mindset that I find with a lot of internationally trained lawyers. So the first is I'm not as competitive as a Canadian law student. That is 100% untrue. The only difference between you and them is they've had 3 years to understand the recruitment process, 3 years to build on their network while they're here. But as people who've come from different jurisdictions, as people who have experience, as people who are committed and passionate about pursuing this profession, you can get caught up and up to speed super quickly. You can understand what the recruitment processes are like. You can understand how you fit into that structure and process very easily because you're all intelligent, capable people. Just because you're not a Canadian student does not make you less competitive. And the second is I need Canadian experience to be competitive. Well, any amount of experience for any job is going to help. And certainly getting Canadian experience is going to help. But if you have experience back home, that's not less important and less impressive. Lawyering is lawyering. Being yelled at by a client is the same. Having tight deadlines for your cases and files and applications is the same. Having a judge grill you on that one thing you didn't prepare as strongly for as everything else feels exactly the same no matter where you are in the world. And so the laws are different, but the skills you have are exactly the same, and you need to learn to value those experiences from those different jurisdictions and how they're going to benefit a potential employer here. So one thing that is true that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to advocate for yourself. Unlike a lot of the jurisdictions you come from, where the elementary school you went to dictates the high school you go to, dictates the university you might have attended, dictates the internships you might get opportunities for, which dictates the Queen's Council you get to practice under. We don't know any of that. We don't know some of your schools. We don't know the education and caliber of it. We don't know some of these lawyers you worked under. However, we do know the lawyer skills you have and the abilities you're coming to us with. And so you're the one who has to explain how impressive all of your education and experience actually has been. Because no one else is going to do that for you here. And we don't have the context of understanding how impressive your background actually is. And there will be some cultural differences, right? There are differences in how maybe you approach a student recruiter versus a partner at a law firm. There might be differences in how you approach instructors. But again, because you're passionate and committed, as long as you ask questions and you're open to feedback, you're going to understand how to overcome some of those cultural differences. Ultimately, everybody here in the legal profession wants to help you. These associations like ITLNCA Network and these workshops are run because people know you need the help and we want to give it to you. Everybody who is in the profession understands how frustrating licensing, accreditation, articling, LPP, getting an associate position, struggling for partnership track. We all understand how difficult a lot of those processes are. And if we can help someone else make it through easier, we're going to go out of our way to try to do that. However, you need to know what you can ask of different people. So that's a separate conversation from this presentation itself, but the approach of, hi, I'm an NCA student, I need help, just does not work in every single context. And so you need to tailor your approach to different people, just like you're going to need to tailor your application materials for every single firm. Okay, so just really quickly about articling and job hunting. Do you know where you are in the process? Because it's not the employer's job to figure out if you're ready to article, if you're soon to be getting your certificate of qualification, if they even know what the certificate of qualification is. It's not the employer's job, it's your job to tell me as an employer that you're ready for the job I need you for when I need that position to start. And so you need to know where you are in the process, which also is going to define, are you looking at a 2L summer position versus an articling or an LPP placement? And all it takes, and all of you have learned from law school, go to your first principles, go to your primary source. The Law Society regulates what it means to be a second-year summer position. They regulate what it means to be an articling student. So figure out how you fit into that definition. If you are 1 year away from entering the licensing process, you're probably looking at law student summer position jobs. If you are in the next year going to be a licensing candidate, then you're probably looking at articling and LPP placements. But it's your job to convey that so that the employer knows if they select you, that you're ready for the job that they're hiring you for. Don't just rely on online postings, please. Anything you find online, hundreds of other people also have found. And anything that you post online is posted at every single law school also. And so everything you passively find online, hundreds of people are applying for. It's not at all an understatement to say 80 or 90% of the jobs out there happen through you connecting with people and them telling you those opportunities exist. And so that is 100% true in Canada, 100% true, especially in Ontario. And so you need to do more than just Googling and going on these job posting platforms. Networking is key, and do your research. So let's actually talk about your application materials, which is what we're here for. Do your research about the firm. Do your research about the role, and recognize that preparation of an application takes a long time. I tell students all the time, I do this with students for hours and hours on end every week. I do this over the lifetime of my profession, thousands of hours in total. And every time I apply for a new board position, a new lawyer position, a new volunteer position, it takes me about an hour or 2 hours to update my resume and cover letter for that position. So don't underestimate how much more time it's going to take you. There's no one size fits all. So you can't just have one amazing resume and cover letter and think, I'm done. I can send that to every single job out there. Because the second you do, if I can replace my organization and my firm name and replace it with any others on that application, you have not done a good enough job of convincing me that you deserve to be hired amongst everyone else who's applied. A really, really good tip is to save the posting, right? Save it in a Word document, print it out as a PDF, because you never know if they're going to take it down. You never know if you're not going to be able to find it again. You never know if you're going to have to refer to it if they select you in for an interview. So always save the posting. We'll talk about formatting and length really quickly in each of the cover letter and resume sections, but resume should be no longer than 2 pages. Cover letters are usually 1 page, sometimes for government positions, 2 pages max. But you're thinking, first and foremost, 2 pages on a resume, 1 page on a cover letter. Those 3 pages form the bulk of your application, and they make the argument for you as to why you deserve this job and why you have the skills they're looking for. And so you have to think of it all working together. So don't be repetitive. Don't repeat things you've already put in your resume, in your cover letter. Don't be redundant. The 10-second test. So there's all that research out there that says HR recruiters and employers look at a resume for about 10 seconds. Now, we're all lawyers. We can get a lot more out of those 10 seconds than most people. However, it's still just 10 seconds. And so make sure you are putting the most interesting experience, the most memorable experience, the ones that are designed to catch my attention, so that after I read 300 applications, I remember, oh, let's ask that person who did that thing in. You need to be thinking every point should stand out just that much, because how else is it going to stand out in a stack of 200 applications? Avoid anything from before your bachelor's level education. So avoid anything high school, primary schools, and all of that. And again, it's because we don't have the context of your jurisdiction. We don't know that the primary school you went to was the top in all of that country and that dictated your entire life journey. We don't have that understanding, and so we can't compare you to the people who went to primary school here. However, we're comparing you from post-secondary onwards, so just university and above. In terms of vagueness, so this is a huge thing and it's going to be hard to cover in this session, but the more specific you can be with your experience, the more memorable it's going to be. So avoid using language that every other law student is going to be using, right? I can do legal drafting. I can do court drafting. I can do legal research. Well, every single law student in the world can also do that for me. But it's the caliber of the experience you've had, the complexity of what you've been able to do, the in-depthness with which you've done some of that research that's going to make you stand out compared to just any other law student. So let's actually get to the resume. This is designed for you to not see exactly what is on this example, because the worst situation I ever find myself is, give me a copy so that I can copy it exactly for my experience. Every resume is going to look different. Every resume that you produce is also going to look different. What I do want you to get a sense of, though, is format and structure. It is 2 pages. Have a header with your name and your contact information right at the top very clearly. It's always education, work experience first, and everything else goes on later. Publications, awards, volunteer, extracurriculars, skills, languages, whatever, those go later. The employer cares first and foremost, what is the caliber of your education? Where have you gotten your experience, and how impressive is that experience? So education and work come first. You'll see that there's no objective section, no skills section. And a lot of Canadian employers not in law will have that in their application. right? You talk about what your objectives for your overall goals are. You talk about some of the skills you have evidenced in your experience. You don't put that in a legal resume, and there's two reasons for that. One, it takes away from the employer wanting to get to see your actual experience and what you've written. And two, those sections tend to be just unproven statements. I have excellent interpersonal skills. I am excellent in advocacy. My first thought when I'm reading it is prove it. And how you prove it is by giving me specific examples throughout your resume that showcase interpersonal skills, that showcase those advocacy skills. So don't think I'm going to copy and paste this exact format for my own. It doesn't matter ultimately what the formatting is and where you put your dates, but you just want to make sure that in those 10 seconds, are you catching my attention with everything you want me to focus on? One huge thing is avoid lists. I think students think I'm going to tell them everything I've ever done, and hopefully, because they see all the different things I've gotten to do, that's going to impress them. Well, you've all studied and you've all been in law. You know, in a giant list of stuff, you might remember the first thing, you sort of remember the last thing, and the middle stuff is all just a mess. And so if you have a list of all the areas of law you've done, all the documents you've ever drafted, all the areas of law you've ever researched, it's not memorable. So avoid giant lists of experiences. However, use the bullet points to your advantage and use specific language. Every bullet point should showcase one key experience that you had at that job and a skill that is relevant from that experience. And finally, you're going to need to have multiple versions. One resume is just not going to cut it. And depending on if you're applying for a litigation firm, all the skills you emphasize should be more tailored towards litigation and advocacy. If you're applying to a transactional firm, then all the skills and experiences should be talked about in a way that speaks to transactional work. If you're applying to a full service, then you need to make sure that's all incorporated in a way that shows that you're interested in all sorts of areas and that you're going to be able to produce in all areas. But one version isn't going to appeal to every single employer. You're going to have multiple versions that you're going to tailor. So more specifically, again, avoid these vague languages. Drafting documents, legal research. Of course, that's what you've done. That's what every law student and lawyer ever does everywhere in the world. But nobody has drafted maybe the specific purchase and sale agreement that you got to draft and the complexity with which you had to deal with the liability clause. Nobody's done sort of the research on some landlord and tenant issue from some commercial developer that you've been able to do that the lawyer then used to advise their clients better. Why I'm saying you need to give me specifics is because people remember the specifics. People remember, oh, that person worked on that kind of case. And I will explain to you, for those of you who have had experience, a transactional file you've worked on worth $5,000 and a transactional file that's multinational worth $60 million. Immediately you understand how much more work one has, how much more complex it is, the level of skill required in both. Same with litigation. Something that was uncontested that you resolved in court in 3 hours on a Thursday is very different from a murder trial that took 3 years to fully try, right? Or, for example, a 1 week-long motion that took place in the Superior Court is very different from even a 2-hour experience at the Court of Appeal. Because we all know appellate litigation is so much more sophisticated and so much more complex. And you see how even just giving you those little details, you immediately are able to sense, oh, this is what this person is capable of. This is the quality of work they can produce. And so you need to be thinking of how to convey that to me instead of just drafted affidavits, drafted court pleadings, legal research, because every single student and every lawyer in the world can do those things for me. Again, avoid long lists. Actually use bullet points, and bullet points aren't just an opportunity for you to write a full paragraph and put a bullet point beside it. They should be short. They should be easy to read. They shouldn't go past 2 lines. And again, think of what are the most memorable experiences I've had from this job, and what is the skill from that experience. Now, a lot of you are going to say, oh, but in that experience, I did so many things, right? I litigated that file, but I also interviewed all the clients. I did all the drafting. I did all the research. I had to cross-examine. I had to do the opening and closing. I had to deal with all of the client memos. Obviously, you did, because that's your experience. But you're the one who has to tell me how to remember that. So you have to tell me, from that experience, is it the client management that you want me to focus on? And if so, that's what you write, client management from that file. If it's the research, extensive research on this narrow issue that allowed me to successfully litigate and win my $6,000 case, right? You need to be that specific and that tailored with the skill first, so that I, as the reader, know exactly what you want me to remember. White space is so important. So for example, on this slide, I haven't packed it full of bullet points. I haven't packed it full of information. And in this way, these 6 bullet points pop out much more saliently and much more clear. And it's something that you can digest much easier. It makes you want to read it. It makes you want to read it quickly, and it's memorable. Think about that in your resume as well. The more you cram into it, the less white space there is, the more you're going to look at it and think, oh, I don't want to read that. It's too much. And there are different ways to write the same skill. So for example, like I was saying, you need maybe a litigation versus a transactional document. I'll give you an example of that. In litigation, you have to go through sort of evidentiary disclosures. You're going through thousands of papers and documents and boxes of information to identify one specific thing. And so you can write it as, evidentiary disclosures, or reviewed document disclosures, or reviewed hundreds and thousands of documents to identify key, limitation period issues, whatever the case might be. And that will speak to litigation. However, if you're looking for a transactional rule, even though the litigation experience is litigation, there is still a way for it to translate to transactional work. For example, in transactional work, due diligence is like going through evidence. It's like reviewing thousands of documents to identify key dates and key issues. It's exactly the same as trying to identify gaps if there's information missing, as in litigation. And so instead of talking about it as going through evidentiary disclosures, maybe you talk about reviewing in-depth, extensively the types of documents and identifying specific issues you're looking for. And in your cover letter, you're able to explain how that's giving you the skills necessary for due diligence transactional work. So think about all of these pages, your 2 pages of a resume and 1 page on a cover letter, working together to build the story as to why you're the right fit for this job right now. Okay? Cover letter. So it should look like a letter. You can again see this is meant for you to not read exactly what is on there, because I don't want you to just copy and paste it. And in fact, it's just a sample cover letter and resume template. And so it's not going to be a great template for anybody because it's not tailored to any specific job. But you can see the header is the same as on the resume. And so your information up top with your contact information very clear. And then it reads and looks like a letter, right? There's a date, there's an address, there's a salutation, and then you go into the letter itself, and there's a signature at the end. So that's the format. It's 1 page and it looks like a letter. So don't be drafting a giant research paper length cover letter, because that's not going to look like a letter. It's going to look like a 3-page thing that you can barely even read through, much less a potential employer. So researching your role and researching the job you're applying for and networking is going to be crucial in your cover letter, because that's where you're going to be able to show the research you've done. oh, you know that this firm operates this way, or you know from meeting that one person how they treat their articling students, or you know that the articling students work on these kind of cases and the work that they're assigned because you got an opportunity to talk to them, and you have the exact experience because you've done that in your past as well. And so in your cover letter, you're not just reiterating what you've already put in your resume, which is already the most impressive experiences and skills. You're trying to now focus on how all of these things work together to make you the right fit for this job. So you're trying to create a narrative of your skills and abilities and knowledge and how all of those work to your favor to make you the right candidate for me right now. So the one way in which this is like a research paper or a thesis is that your thesis is hire me. And every paragraph should form your proof as to why you should be hired. And you shouldn't just be hired because I'm an NCA student and I've had 6 years of work experience and I'm really passionate about your firm. Thank you. That's not a very convincing argument because that's what everyone else is saying. So you actually need to think, why do you at this moment want this job right now? Because you are dedicated and passionate about this area of law, then tell me and prove to me why you have this passion. If you're saying the 6 years of experience you've developed from India or from Nigeria is going to be an asset to them, then in that paragraph, prove to me how those experiences align with exactly what you're going to be asked to do here. And so you need to think about it as a thesis where every paragraph you write, every proof you create links back to the thesis of why you deserve this job. So it's not just I have the passion, it's my passions will serve me in this job, how? It's not just that I have the experience is going to help you with this job, how? Always link it back. And you're going to need to have multiple drafts. Again, one cover letter is not going to read the same for every single employer. If I can just remove the name of my firm or organization and replace it with any other, it's going to look like a template cover letter. And I'm going to move on to somebody who's thought about it a little bit more. This is your example to show me what your written advocacy skills for yourself are, right? Lawyers need to have oral and written advocacy skills. And you can't just say, I'm going to keep it vague and hope to explain it in an interview until you've convinced me you deserve an interview on paper. So really think about making a convincing argument even on a cover letter. Introducing who you are, explaining why you're so interested and passionate, explaining why your experiences are key to the types of work that they're going to assign you, and why that makes you the overall best fit for them right now. And don't use any unqualified statements. So similar to your resume, don't just say, I have excellent interpersonal skills, please consider me. Prove everything you're saying. If you're saying you have excellent interpersonal skills, talk about all the volunteer that shows that you have that. Talk about all the opportunities in school and at work that you've been able to example that. And then talk about how that skill is going to help you in this job right now, because you know that the team that they work on is incredibly collaborative, and those interpersonal skills are going to help you not only voice your opinion, but provide meaningful insights on any file that they use, or that they're going to have you be on. So let's talk about some key examples. I know everyone wants examples. I've chosen very specific examples so that, again, you can't just copy and paste this for yourself. One of the things to avoid is wasting space. You have one page on a cover letter. You don't have time to waste space. So don't just Google the firm and put what their firm motto is into your cover letter. And that's what this student has done, right? So I'm not going to read it all, but it's, with your firm's strategically designed training program, it will address all the needs I have in this early stage of my career, the dynamic, positive team environment culture that you've inspired motivates each team member to put forth his or her best efforts. Teamwork is not a buzzword for your firm. And I know that with the national and international platform that you have, your firm is the finest law firm to help me achieve excellence. What have I learned about you in that? I've learned nothing about who you are. You've only Googled basically the website of the law firm and tried to copy and paste parts of it that really speak to you, but you haven't explained why. You haven't explained your journey in any way. So you've wasted an entire paragraph just reiterating what the firm website says. There's no personal connection to it. There's no understanding of how it works into your overall career development or your story. And you're just repeating information that they already know. They're wanting to get to know you. They want to know why these things really align with you. And so be mindful that you're trying to create a narrative. You're not just trying to Google for the sake of Googling. So another example, I'm drawn to your firm's wide range of practice areas and its reputation. Your firm demonstrates a commitment to transitioning from law school to legal practice. And I'm drawn to your policy of working with students. Every law student applying for a law student position wants to learn and grow, wants to learn about the firm, wants to get that experience. This doesn't tell me anything unique about you. Doesn't tell me anything about why this firm above other firms is where you want to be, why our training model really appeals to you, because you've talked to some of the people who are at the firm and they speak really highly about the mentorship and how, you know, the partners have open doors and that any questions are always valid because they're really supportive of people wanting to ask questions and wanting to grow. There is a qualitative difference between saying something you hope is going to resonate with somebody and trying to say what you think they want to hear versus actually telling me a story about why you think you're the right fit for me. Okay.
Michael, let me just interrupt for 1 second. There is one thing that I noticed a lot related to this through the interviews and also when I started my job, is that when you're doing mostly the cover letter, what they're looking for is not just that they want to like you and want to meet you in person, but also that they're looking for how good you're going to be at the job. So if you're applying to a position and all you're saying is like what you saw on the website and you can't connect it with yourself and show why you're actually interested and give examples, they're going to think that when you're in the job, you're going to get a research topic, you're going to go to Westlaw, Quidlaw, get the case law and just throw it to them and won't be able to put together the pieces and explain them why you got to that position. So I think also the cover letter is a working exercise for them to see how good you are at showing your point of view, showing your arguments, and showing that you were good to articulate ideas, because if they don't see that on the cover letter, they're not even going to want to interview or meet you at all.
100%. It's exactly that point. This is part of your written advocacy skills. If you can't convince me on one page that you deserve an interview, can I be convinced that you can write a one-page legal memo that convinces our client of the position we want to take? Can I be convinced that the research memo you give is going to give me a point of view that I can base how I'm going to proceed on this file with? Right, so it's an example of your written advocacy skills. Priscilla is 100% correct. It's showing them, look, I have these skills that you need a student to have, and I'm going to do it for myself on my behalf right now. So here are some examples of like better and more specific examples. Again, clearly you can't copy it because this is someone else's example and their life experience, which is exactly why I chose it. But these are from former students in the LLM. They've actually written these in their cover letters. But for example, this first one is talking about proven soft skills. So all of you are going to want to talk about teamwork and organizational skills and communication skills. This person said, I've always approached my experiences with enthusiasm and commitment, and that has allowed me great communication organizational skills. And she then gives examples. I was a main correspondent on an international investor, and I had the opportunities to make decisions based on the individual needs of my clients, and resulted in the sale of 2 portfolios worth $120 million. That's showing the communication skills. It's showing the example that they have organizational skills to execute. And again, I'm confident and relaxed when working with other people and enjoy being part of the team. So give me that example. She's proven this example to me of the skill she's talking about. And she, in a later part in that paragraph, is going to be able to link it to the job itself that she's applying for. And make yourself memorable, right? It's not necessarily memorable just to say, I'm an NCA student, I'm going through licensing, I will be an articling member of the Law Society by 2021, so I'm applying for your job. Maybe you talk about your experience in a narrative that they understand, right? I've always sought out challenges through my education and work experience. I've challenged myself in, coming to a different country and changing practice areas and challenging myself to more education. And I'm looking for my next challenge, which is why I'm so drawn to your opportunity, because I know how challenging it is for all the articling students and how rewarding it is for all of them. So use one example to make yourself memorable. You can bet that the person who wrote this on their cover letter, I'm never going to forget. This person got an opportunity to work for the FIFA organizing committee for the 2010 World Cup. I'm forever going to remember that that student got to work on that. And I'm always going to be like, oh, that student worked on the World Cup. Be memorable. That's the only way you're going to stand out in a stack of 300 applications. And an unfortunate example of minimizing your experience, which I see a lot of, again, it stems from this idea that maybe they don't understand the international experience, maybe it's international and so I want to minimize it because it's not Canadian experience. Shift your mindset, because if you write the amazing experiences you've had in the past in a way that diminishes it, you're framing for the employer that you don't feel confident about it, that you don't think it's valuable. So for example, this one said, I had the opportunity to play leadership roles in various organizations and have gained practicing skills and experience while working as an intern, as a National Youth Service lawyer, and as a legal practitioner, all within Nigeria. And particularly coordinating law school interns and representing clients in court has enhanced my ability to work with less supervision. Is the fact that this person has had so much experience being a lawyer, is the most impressive part of that their ability to work with less supervision? No, it's absolutely not. I want to know what that experience has been. What did they do as a legal practitioner? How were they able to be a leader in all of these roles? Were there examples of their leadership throughout every single one of those opportunities? They're drastically underselling the experience that they've come through. And so it really doesn't allow me to connect with the story of what they're trying to tell me as to why they're the right fit for me right now. I'm going to talk really quickly about some of the other documents that are going to form part of your application, and that will leave us with, a good 15 minutes for questions, which I'm sure a lot of you will have. So transcripts, make sure you have copies of your transcripts. For a lot of job applications, they're not necessarily going to want official sealed transcripts. And so make sure you've ordered one for yourself as well, and make sure it's something that you can scan in as a PDF. One thing to think about, especially if you're scanning in black and white, is to do a copy for yourself to see, is it still legible? I often see transcripts scanned in that's completely illegible because they've scanned it in with the contrast setting not done well enough and it's all just black. If it's in a different language, maybe you think about having an official translation attached to that transcript as well so they can see what the courses are. Especially if it's from a jurisdiction with a really different grading standard, maybe you also have sort of an explanation document either on the back side of that transcript or from the university officially to explain how, the 16-point grade system from Venezuela translates to what a JD student would have here. Often, especially in summer second-year positions or even in articling positions, they might ask you for a list of courses you're taking, because the assumption is that you're going into your last year of study because you are a year away from licensing, which is what an articling student is defined by the Law Society, a student who is 1 year away from licensing. And so if you're doing your NCAs, if you're in an LLM program, if you're still writing challenge exams, that's what you would include to let them know that you are still going through the process and that you will be ready to article or do the LPP placement when that role starts. Writing samples are often asked, especially for larger organizations and sometimes from government organizations, and they really just want to see an example of your writing. So don't put in a court pleading. Don't put in sort of things where you haven't written an argument of any sort. We know that if we put a precedent in front of you, you're going to be able to copy and paste that for a new case. Whereas we don't know the caliber of your research. We don't know the caliber of your analysis and the caliber of your opinions, and can you support them with the research that you've identified. So put in an actual sample of your legal research and writing. If you've written anything for a law firm before, just redact all the confidential information. If you've been in school before, submit an assignment if you want. However, even with that assignment, make sure you've gone through it and updated it. Anything your instructor has identified as being weaknesses in your writing will also be identified by that employer because they're lawyers in the profession. So actually go through the exercise of fixing it up and improving it before submitting it. And reference letters are often asked, so the longer you've been out of the profession, the more they're going to want maybe professional references. The longer you've been out of school, the more professional references might be relevant. But the closer you've been to school, the more they're going to want to see some academic legal references. Regardless of the reference, though, let them know what to talk about. Let them know the skills you want them to highlight. Because I've seen many references that just say, I've known this person since they were a baby and they've always been passionate about law and they make an excellent lawyer. The employer doesn't necessarily care about that. They want to see, what are your skills? What are your relevant abilities from somebody who's qualified to assess that? So make sure your professional references know what kind of skills that they should comment on. And that really is it. So again, my name is Michael Tam. I'm the program lawyer at Osgoode Professional Development. Unfortunately, I only do resume and cover letter workshops and provide information to my LLM students. But I do my best to try to attend and run sessions like this quite regularly. You're welcome to try to reach out to me and try to make a meaningful connection. I would love that as well. But if you have any questions about our programs, you can always contact us at OsgoodePD.ca as well as our admissions office. And so with that, I'm gonna let Priscilla talk about her experiences, and then we can open it up for questions.
Hi everyone, I am Priscilla. I'm a director of the ITLNCA networks. I'm currently a student at OsgoodePD, and Michael was one of the people that helped me with my resume and cover letter. I just finished last week summer period at the Ministry of Attorney General, and I'm going to be an articling student there next year. So I'm going to give you a few tips that I followed when I was writing my resume and my cover letter, but mostly the cover letter because I think that was the most challenging piece of my application. So the first thing is that you want to try to get noticed by them. You want to try, as Michael said, to show a story that they will remember after reading 300, 400 applications. So you have to make sure that it's not too long and that it's very organized. Because on the top of your experience, on top of your story and how interesting you are, they will also want to see your organizational skills. So you have to make sure, for example, in the resume that all the bullet points are the same, which before I didn't, and then Michael corrected me. You have to make sure that all the fonts are the same size, the same letter type, because that shows the attention to detail that they need you to have in the job. So you have to make sure that everything is perfectly well formatted. The other thing is use simple language. Don't use colorful language. Don't come trying to sound very difficult and using a lot of commas and like doing inverted sentences. Don't do that. Like, be simple. Just throw your best arguments about yourself. Try to say yourself, but also use simple language, because that's what lawyers right now are wanting us to use in the profession. So if you write too difficult and you keep trying to find vocabulary and thesaurus to make you sound smart, they're not going to think you're smart. So they know we have access to the internet and that we can use thesaurus to look for synonyms. So make sure you don't do that. And just like try to think before you start writing. Try to think for a week. Oh, now we don't have that much time, but like 2 days or 3 days. What are your strengths and what is the best story you can tell? Like, what is the experience for your home jurisdiction or here in Canada that you think is meaningful enough for you to put in the one page you're using to convince the employer that they have to talk to you? So try to take time to do that. Don't do it in a rush, and also don't try to do it in a rush, because you might make typos or mistakes that they're going to notice, and that might cost you your interview. So you want to try your best to treat it not as a full-time job, but as a part-time job, and actually put the effort into it. The other thing is that you should try to show your personality in their cover letter. Because as Michael said, everybody knows how to do research, everybody knows how to do legal drafting, and like, I'm sure every single candidate is an interesting person that they want to meet, but they just have very limited slots of interviews that they can have people there. So you have to make sure to stand out. And for that, you have to try to show as much as you can your personality. For example, if you are an extroverted person, try to show that in your cover letter. Try to show how passionate you are about the area, but not just say you are passionate, but also give examples, as Michael said. Like, you have to back up literally everything you say, because that also makes it more, makes it more real. So when I started making my cover letter, I made a very bland, boring cover letter. Like, I just wrote everything I could about myself. I just like threw it out there, and then I went to talk to Michael. And then he was like, where are you? Like, where is your personality? Like, I don't see yourself here. And that was so true. And like, it was a shock for me that I had to put that in a cover letter. Like, I had no idea that I actually had to try to extract who I am and put it on a paper. And that is very hard, but I'm sure everybody can do it. And like, of course, if you're an introvert, like, you want them to know who you are, so they want to meet you. So that is like the biggest tip I can give. And also, when you're trying to apply to a firm, to make sure that you show not only why you're passionate about the area they work with, and show examples for why you're passionate about the area. Don't just apply somewhere you like have no wish to work just because you feel like you have to apply to every single position. You don't. You don't have to apply to all 78 positions that are on the law. You can select the ones you actually like and do great cover letters for them. But also, like, try to show why you are passionate about the firm. Like, why do you want to work at that specific firm? Like, why are they so good that you want to start your career at that specific location? And that you do not just by showing the research you did, but by linking that to something maybe you did at your home jurisdiction. Like, I want to work with you because I did something similar. Let's say I'm from Brazil, like in Brazil. Like, for example, I'm working right now at a constitutional law branch, and I know that they really enjoy clerkships. And I did 2 clerkships back home. So I put that on my cover letter to show that I'm interested in academic work, I'm interested in research, I'm also very interested in litigation, and that they have everything I need to start my career in the position I want to be in the future, but also that I'm also a good candidate to help them. So it's a cover letter is a 2-way thing. Like, you have to sell yourself for them to show how good you are, but you also have to show like why they're good for you, because it's not just about loving, like them loving you and wanting to meet you. It's about you also wanting to work at the firm. So those are the tips I have to give. And